And welcome back to Am's Untitled Podcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to my Percy Jackson dedicated podcast. I would first like to apologise for this episode being so late. It's the half term holidays, so the family's home. I've literally had no time to sit by myself and record this episode. So I do apologise that this episode is a few days late, but I hope you guys can understand. And hopefully by next week we shall be back to our normal pattern. Just before we start today's episode and we break down and review the episode together, I just wanted to say that we got a casting announcement yesterday. So we've got the actress that's going to play Hera, Demeter, and Apollo, and they are all amazing. If you want to know Percy Jackson content, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Threads. Normally, any sort of content that I find out goes up on there straight away. So if you're not following me on Instagram and Threads, I highly recommend you do it because I'm your girl. If you need some Percy Jackson news, I'm your girl. So yeah, I just thought I'd briefly mention that. I did have a look at some of the comments underneath my threads, and there was a particular comment that I was a bit shocked about. I didn't realize that people would have such strong opinions on casting choices, but I want to say that guys, the show know what they're doing. They cast the people that they think are the best roles and can do the best job for the character. So I just want people to kind of bear that in mind when they're making comments about casting choices. It's not very nice and it's quite upsetting for the person who has been cast. So I'd just like to put that little disclaimer out there that if you have a very strong opinion on a casting choice, please do be careful because your words can actually hurt people's feelings. So I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to kind of get that out there before we check it. Oh God, I don't know what I was trying to say there. Before we start today's episode. So, in today's episode, we're going to be reviewing episode 5. So, if you don't know how this works, I basically give you a rundown of what happens in the scene and I pick up any sort of Easter eggs, any book references, any changes uh, between the show and the book, and also any of my personal comments and things like that. So, just a quick warning, this episode does contain major spoilers from the show, so if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend checking the show out first. It's available to stream now on Disney Plus and Hulu. But if you've seen it, then please do continue listening. Right, let's start. I have to say, episode 5 is my favorite. It is the one I have been most anticipating, and it did not disappoint. And I'm so happy with this episode. And I do apologize if you're here listening to me record an hour long episode. I'm sorry, I just can't help myself. I have way too much to say. Anyway, let's get started before I ramble on any longer. Okay, so in the first scene, Percy wakes up inside a steam room and he looks quite confused. And obviously nobody is in the steam room with him, so he's sort of wondering like what the hell happened to everyone else. He sort of stands up and he goes to walk to the door. And just as he's about to grab the door handle, Annabeth stops him. And guys, I'm not trying to imply something here, but the way he looks at her, he's so happy that she's alive and that he doesn't have to do this by himself. And, I think he's probably the most concerned over her safety and the fact that she's safe and he can see that she's physically safe is quite nice. And also, it's just like he has this yearning ability that I've never seen anybody else be able to have, which is quite nice. And he does a lot of eye acting, which I really like. Just, you know, I don't know how to describe it really. It's like, yeah, so like just the way he looks at her, like she's the most important thing to him is like the cutest thing, but also like it shows like how much he's yearning without realizing, which I quite like. Percy asks Annabeth where they are, and you know what? This kind of stands out to me because I love like when he doesn't have a clue what's going on. He expects her to know, and he thinks that just because she's his wise girl, like she'll know absolutely everything, which we know is not true. But it turns out that Annabeth in this situation is equally as clueless as him. She has no idea what's going on or where they are. And they hear the door open, and a lady dressed in all white introduces herself as Hilla. Ooh, very exciting. And she's their concierge. I just want to quickly say something. Jasmine, who plays Hilla, is absolutely stunning. Like, she's beautiful. And a huge thank you to her. She interacts with my stories when I post pictures of her, so I'm really happy. So, Jasmine, if you're listening to this, thank you so much for that. And she's absolutely stunning, and she plays this part really, really well. Um, Percy asks about Tyson. Obviously, he doesn't obviously mention Clarisse or the rest of the crew. because obviously Tyson is the only person that Percy cares about. Like, he's made a promise to his mom to always look after him, and now he has no idea where he is. And Annabeth takes the liberty of asking about Clarisse and the rest of their crew. And you know what? This was actually really sad because it's just they've lost everything in such a short period of time. They have no idea what's happened to everyone else. Like, for all they know, those people could be dead. And Hiller tells them that, our fisherman found you floating on a raft, and unfortunately, you guys were the only survivors. And, Walker's face, like, he does so much facial acting, and he just looks like the wind has been knocked out of him. Like, I felt so terrible watching him on that screen. I was like, oh, you poor thing. But also, like, I feel like he regrets a lot of things, which is the way that he treated Tyson. Like, he knows that he never valued him for who he was and how he was, and he never looked at him as like an equal or as a brother. And now that Tyson's gone, he's like, I didn't even have a chance to make it up to him, which is really sad. But also, I feel like it's just teaching him the value of Tyson at the same time. So, very valuable lesson can be learned for all of us from here, which is like, spend time with the people that love and respect you and stand by you, because you don't know how long they're going to be around. Like, you don't know when fate can take them away from you, which I think is quite interesting. Um, Percy turns away to go and sit down, and it's really hit him hard. And, he's really sad, but also, like I said, it's a bit of a reality check from him. Like, up until now, he's been taking Tyson for granted. And now he's realized that actually, when he's not there, how much he needs him. Hilla tells them to take all the time they need, and she leaves. Annabeth turns to Percy, and you can tell, like, she doesn't know how to comfort him. Like, she doesn't have Percy's people skills. She doesn't have his empathy. She doesn't know how to navigate an emotional situation like this. And, you know, I think it's this whole theme of like, it comes back to the fact that she's always lived her life as a demigod. She's never really picked up any sort of like people social skills like empathy or compassion. Like, she's just learned how to be a warrior, and she's just learned how to control her emotions instead of feeling them. And now that Percy's in a situation where he's the one that's emotional, like, she doesn't know how to help him basically. And Percy remembers the promise that obviously he made to his mom about protecting Tyson, and he's failed. He didn't protect him, and now he's lost him, and he doesn't know if he's going to find him again. And you can see the kind of fear, or like also the disappointment on his face. He knows the impact that this is going to have on Sally, and he feels so guilty about it. And it literally crushed my soul a little bit. I was like, oh, my poor baby. Like, he shouldn't feel like that. Um, Obviously, Annabeth tries to take on a more positive light, and she says, she's trying to reassure him that Tyson could still be alive, and he just shoots her down straight away. He's like, no, like, we've lost everything. And seeing his hurt on his face, like, I don't think, like, Walker's an incredible actor, and like when he stands there, you feel his emotions. And I felt the same way, like, reading book Percy, which is amazing. And it's nice to see, like, how the roles have reversed in this situation. Normally it's like Percy like comforting Annabeth, picking her up when she's having a hard time. But today, like, the roles have changed, and now Annabeth is the one that has to comfort him, and she's realized actually how difficult it is to pick up someone's spirits, especially when they're grieving. And Annabeth tells him, you stay here while she goes out and scouts the area. But of course, Percy doesn't listen, and he chases after her. And I think one of the reasons why he chases after her is I feel like he's become a lot more protective over her. Like, since he's lost Tyson, he'd realized that how many people can actually be taken away from him. And now Annabeth is the only person that he's got left. So it's like, if she gets taken, like, that's it. And I'm honestly so proud of Walker in this scene. His acting was absolutely incredible, and he deserves an award for that scene because he was just fabulous in it. Right, let's move on to the next scene, and it opens up with Annabeth walking through the spa. Can we just talk about how gorgeous the resort and spa set is? It is stunning. Like, honestly, it's more beautiful than I could have ever imagined, and it was beyond anything I ever imagined when I was reading the book. Um, and of course, Hilla comes back and welcomes them to Cece's spa and resort. And you know what? You guys don't understand. Like, since I read this book, like, this is the bit that I was most anticipating. Like, I wanted to see this. And the fact, like, I had to wait so long for it was killing me internally. But I just knew that the show was going to do a great job with this. Annabeth asks what this place is, and Hilla tells her that it's the only sanctuary in the Sea of Monsters. She says it's a place of rest so heroes can relax and then get back on track. And you know, you can tell like when Percy and Annabeth are like looking at her and they're trying to understand what she's saying, they just look so suspicious of her, and it just shows like their how much on edge these demigods are all the time because they never know when they're going to find themselves in danger. And obviously, behind them, a hero swings the doors open of Cersei's office and steps out to make a dramatic entrance. Oh my. I was a bit like, whoa, what's going on here? Hilla recognizes the hero as Stavros, and she looks so shocked that he wants to leave. I like the subtle foreshadowing here, which is something a lot of people don't pick up. It's like the show always kind of subtly tells you what's about to happen without physically telling you. And she tells them that Stavros is eager to get back to his quest. So every demigod, every hero that is on this resort and this spa is on a quest, basically. And Percy looks so confused, and Hilla tells them that every hero is on a quest and she asks to be excused because that doesn't happen often. Like the way she used the word doesn't happen often, I was like, yeah, you can tell like there was something fishy going on around here from the beginning. But okay, let's kind of see where this takes us. Annabeth asks um what's out there basically, and someone mentions the sirens, and I'm so excited to see the sirens. Honestly, Siren Bay was the scene that I was most anticipating for season 2. I was more excited for that than anything else, and the fact that it was coming, like I was getting more and more excited as the episode went on. Percy and Annabeth follow the crowd into a room full of windows that look out into the sea. Honestly, it was just a beautiful, beautiful shot. Like, I love the whole set design. I love the massive spiral staircase. I think there's something like so classy about it. And whoever are the set designers on Percy always create the most incredible sets. And this was definitely one of the standout ones this season. Cece walks down the stairs and Hilla introduces her to the new arrivals, and she knows that they are children of Poseidon and Athena. Now again, that became very suspicious to me. It was like, how does she know that? Like, how does she know that they're obviously she's gonna know they're demigods. How does she know their parents? Which is quite interesting. She says that she is sorry for their loss, and Annabeth tries to interrupt her, and Cece calls her impatient, while Hilla is making notes of this, basically. She's analysing the two of them, like she's trying to figure out their fatal flaw. And she thinks that just by analysing what they're saying, she's going to understand what their fatal flaw is. She says that she doesn't think that that is Annabeth's fatal flaw, being impatient. Though she says she senses something deeper, but it's harder to see past their guilt at the moment. I thought that this was quite interesting because I feel like it was a bit of a nod to the fact that Annabeth is maybe feeling a bit guilty about the way she treated Tyson as well. She also didn't value Tyson for who he was. And also, I feel like she's feeling a little bit guilty about Clarisse as well because obviously this was Clarisse's quest. And for all they know, she could be dead. And she thinks that it's because she made the choice to tell Clarisse that they should fight Scylla instead of Charybdis. So I think there's a little bit of guilt going on there, which is what Cece can feel. Cece says that after some rest, she'll be able to help them work out what's wrong with them. This made me laugh because Percy was like, thank you. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, there's these like these humorous moments in serious situations, which I really love. And this was a really nice example of it. It was like, it was very subtle, but also quite effective. And I think it gives the audience a little bit of a respite after what happened at the end of episode 4, basically, when the ironclad basically disintegrated. And obviously, everyone is watching Stavros sail towards the sirens, and Annabeth asks them, you know, like, what's out there because she can't see anything from where she stood, like she can't see nothing. And Cece tells her like to use the telescope, but warns her that it won't be a pretty sight. Percy looks through the telescope, and Cece tells them that the siren song is a deadly test that only a few heroes can pass. And you know, all that I could think of was that she was trying to scare them. Like she wanted them to be so afraid that they don't leave. in other words. And obviously, we'll come onto that a bit more. Cece tells them that she's tried her best to help the people pass the test, but not everyone is patient. Again, a little bit of a dig at Annabeth there. And we see Stavros sort of sailing straight towards the sirens, and Percy asks what they sound like. We see Stavros on the island while Cece explains that the sirens basically peer into heroes' souls and use their fatal flaws against them. Stavros eventually screams and basically gets killed by the sirens, and Percy jumps and looks away from the telescope. I think Percy has realized like how difficult the siren test actually is. I think up until now, like him and Annabeth actually don't really have a clue about what they're about to face. And I think just watching like a fellow demigod get killed because of their own like their own choice was quite like a shock to the both of them. Hilla looks also really shocked and upset. And you know what? I feel really bad for her because obviously, like, this is her job. Like, she stays with Cece, she watches maybe hundreds and hundreds of demigods like try and get past this, and she sees pretty much all of them die if they can't pass this trial, and that must be like horrible for anyone to watch. And you know, the fact that you could see that on her face as well is quite, it's quite sad. Cece tells them that they are safe here and they can stay as long as they like. Annabeth also tries to look through the telescope and she gets scared and looks away, and that's how the scene ends. Okay, let's move on to scene three. Okay, so scene three opens with them walking down the spiral staircase. Again, I have to give some appreciation for the spiral staircase because it is sick. Um, Percy asks about Stavros' fatal flaw, and Cece tells him that his fatal flaw was bravery, and that he thought her training was for cowards. Again, like I understand. I suppose if his fatal flaw is bravery, he's not really going to listen to anyone, is he? But the fact, like, to call her training for cowards, I just think is a little bit rude. But okay. She looks at all the heroes who are basically all the demigods that are stood there, and she tells them that it takes true bravery to confront their true self. Right? Yes, that is true. That is a great moral lesson, and I think she is kind of like a villain with a hero's mentality. Like, I think it's more of her trying to sell her training to people so that they will continue to stay at her resort, as opposed to wanting them to succeed and pass the sirens, if you know what I mean. Annabeth says that they should use wax like Odysseus did, which is a fair point actually. Like that is the way he passed the sirens. And Cece says Odysseus didn't use any ordinary beeswax; it was from Aristaeus's personal hive. And if you don't know who Aristaeus is, he's the god of beekeeping. And again, he doesn't normally get mentioned in the books, but this is just something that the show has added. Cece makes another point about Annabeth's reliance on self knowledge, and Hilla writes that down. She reminds Annabeth that the sirens will use her greatest weakness against her. And, you know, she's kind of touching Annabeth's hair, and she looked really uncomfortable. And to be quite honest, I would be the same. Like, be like this random woman just touching your hair, like, that just doesn't sound right. And obviously, the words are making Annabeth uncomfortable as well. Like, hello, personal space, lady. Like, respect the personal space. And Leah's face, honestly, like, she pulls this face with her eyes, and it made me laugh. It was just like, you could tell, like, it was a very, very real expression. She says that if they suppress their fatal flaw, they will be able to sail past the sirens. I don't think it's that easy. I don't think it's just about knowing what your fatal flaw is and like training on that. I think it's more about that person as an individual, if you know what I mean. And then she sort of shows them the six who have passed the sirens, and she points to their statues, which are kind of surrounding the room. And Annabeth asks how long the training's going to take, and Cece tells her it entirely depends on her, which is already like you can tell like if there's no time limit on it. I think Annabeth knows that like it must take a while, and obviously they don't have that time to time. Like they've got to get the golden fleece back to camp, and they have to save Grover. Annabeth says that there has to be another way, and she suggests sailing in the opposite direction to the sirens. But Percy and Cersei, which was really quick, like really weird, both at the same time tell her that the Sea of Monsters doesn't work like that. She says that there is no getting around the sirens, and that she warns them that there are no shortcuts, and then she walks away. And that's how the scene sort of concludes. Okay, so the next scene is someone who we haven't seen in the episode yet, and it's Clarisse, and she's basically washes it up on Polyphemus's island. And when she stands up and sort of like rubs the sand and everything off her face, she sees the golden fleece hanging from the tree in the distance, and she realizes that she's found it. Like, this is what's going to complete her quest. Like, she basically ended up in the right place without even meaning to. She runs towards the cave, but eventually gets caught in a trap, and Polyphemus basically grabs her. He's absolutely terrifying, by the way. Like, he's huge, and he makes like Dior is quite tall. Like, I think that she's quite tall for a girl. And honestly, like watching him just like pick her up was just like, whoa, okay. Like, she looks like tiny next to him, which is insane. And obviously, Grover is inside the cave singing the consensus song to himself. He's so cute. Honestly, can we talk about how amazing Arian looks in that wedding dress? Like, he suits it so well. Like, I couldn't have imagined a better person to wear that wedding dress. He hears Polyphemus and obviously covers his face with a veil. And he sees Clarisse sort of caught in a net while Polyphemus tries to place her over, I think it's a pot of water that he's obviously planning to cook her. And Grover gets excited when he hears Polyphemus say that he's got a demigod. So I'm assuming he assumed that it was Percy or Annabeth, and of course that wasn't the case. Grover asks the demigod who they are, and Clarisse says, "Get me down." And you could tell like she's quite annoyed, and of course like Grover takes off his veil. Um, and Grover asks her, if Percy is on the island with her, and obviously, like in the heat of the moment, like all she cares about is getting down, which is fair enough. Like, I wouldn't be too happy myself if I was caught in a net, so I can understand how frustrating this must be for her. Clarisse obviously manages to rescue herself by cutting herself down, and she lands on like she literally face plants the floor, and it looked like it must have hurt. Like, I hope Dior genuinely didn't hurt her face when she did that because it looked quite painful. She compliments Grover, saying he has a very nice dress, and yes, I agree, it's a beautiful dress. It's like a kind of like an off-white color, and it has like pearls and like hand woven doves and what else was on it? Like lace. It was beautiful. Like, whoever designed that in the costume team was fabulous because it was stunning. Um Clarice is obviously trying to create a weapon to ambush Polyphemus. Yeah, I honestly don't think that that's going to work, but okay. And Grover is like still persistently asking about Percy and Annabeth, and eventually, like, Clarice gets fed up and she's like, "Look, Percy and Annabeth are dead." And honestly, the hurt on Grover's face is like, no, like he doesn't believe her. Like, he was like, "There's no way that they're dead." And she said, "No one is coming to help them, and she's not planning to go down without a fight." Which is a very airy child thing to do, but also like fair play to her because I would have the same attitude. Like, you can tell she's upset. Like, you can tell she's hurt over losing. Not really Percy and Annabeth necessarily, but I think it was more about the fact that she's lost all her crew and she'd built such an incredible bond with them, not really having a bond with anyone. And now all of a sudden they're all gone. And I think that that's really affected her, which is why, like, she's got this guard back up again and she doesn't want to let anyone in again. Grover tells her that Percy and Annabeth are alive and that he can sense that much through the empathy link. I love that they kept the empathy link in the show. I think it's such an integral part of Percy and Grover's friendship, and I'm so happy that the show has kept that in there. And like they touch on it, like it's not something that's just been put in the show for no reason. Like, they actually touch on it, which is quite cool. He tells her that hope can be a powerful tool, and what a beautiful line. And you know, I think the reason why Grover has survived this long is because he is a hopeful person and he believes in his friends and he believes that he'll find a way out. And that's such an incredible lesson to people. I'm quite a pessimistic person, and sometimes I get to stages where I don't really have any hope over anything. But it's so nice to hear Grover like drill that lesson with her. Like, we forget sometimes, at least I do anyway, that Grover's actually a lot older and he's a lot wiser. So whatever he's learned, like, over the years, he tries to teach that to the demigods, which is very interesting. And he mentions that he's been planning an escape, but he needed at least one other person to help him. And he's staring at the hole in the ceiling where the golden fleece is dangling in the tree, and Clarice notices it too. And I think at this point, she realizes that that's her way out. Like, she has Grover to help her, and she's going to find a way out. Okay, so that's where the scene comes to an end, and then we come back to Cersei's island again. This is the bit I'm probably most excited for in the episode. So, Percy and Annabeth have just had an amazing makeover, which is nice, which was a big change in the show because obviously, like, from the beginning, in the book, like Percy and Annabeth kind of get separated, and Percy turns into a guinea pig, and obviously Annabeth gets taken to have a makeover done. So I'm glad that they both got to do it together. Leah looks absolutely stunning in that dress. It was like a beautiful gold with a nice belt, and she had these lovely little earrings in, and her hair. So we just talk about her hair. Her hair looks stunning, and I love like the leaf. Um, I'm gonna call it a crown. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it looked really nice like on her. And also like Walker looks so cute with his little like tight curls and like side part. And obviously in the toga, like come on, like we got to give some appreciation to the toga. They both looked amazing, and I think the makeup artist did such a brilliant job, and so did the hair team. I think they both looked amazing. They looked very like regal Greek, which I liked. And obviously there's an old lady helping Percy to straighten his leaf crown, which I thought was really cute. Remember that old lady? She's very important. And there's a bit of a Percy moment where they're both just like staring at each other, looking at each other up and down. And Annabeth tells him like, no one needs to know about this at camp, and he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, which is so funny. Like I love that they're so unserious together as well. And they walk into Cece's office and they see all these animals caged up in her office. And I felt so bad because I was like, these poor animals, like she just keeps them imprisoned on this island, which I think is really sad. And I saw like they showed us a shot of the guinea pig cage, and I was like, uh-oh. I was like, I know what's gonna happen and they don't like it. And Annabeth tells Cece, like we're kind of in a rush, like we need to get out of here. Cece sort of summons a book into her hand, and Annabeth realizes that she has magic and she's Cersei. Cersei the witch, or the sorceress, whatever you want to call her. And she says to Annabeth that she's a sorceress, and Annabeth obviously remembers her turning Odysseus's men into pigs, which she did do, by the way, guys. Cece says that she's worked through her anger and she's not a monster anymore, and she's the only person that's cursed to stay on this island while everybody else is free to leave. Remember that because she says it multiple times in the episode, but remember that because it's really important. She takes the sheet off her mirror, and oh god, I didn't like what was coming because I could sense that there was something bad about to happen. I just didn't know what was going to happen. And Annabeth asks her, what's your fatal flaw? And she says empathy. She literally can't help helping people even when they hurt her. Again, very important. She's a very complicated character, Cece. Like she's not all bad, but you can kind of understand why she is the way that she is as well. Percy says that he's been through many evaluations before, and he just goes and stands in front of the mirror. He sees many flashbacks of Tyson's and the conversations he's had with him. And Annabeth can see like there's a jug of water on Cece's desk, and she can see like a whirlpool sort of forming in the jug. And you can see how powerful Percy's emotions are, that even any sort of liquid around him can feel his anger and his sadness, which is quite interesting. And Percy sees all the times where he sacrificed himself for his friends. And I love that we got to see all the flashbacks from season one. So, like the scene where he saves Grover from the Tartarus pit, and where he saves Annabeth from the Chimera. Like all these times were playing again and again. And he sees Tyson again and realizes that Tyson was the only person that he couldn't save. Like he failed to save one of his friends, and obviously that's got to be difficult for someone who has the fatal flaw of personal loyalty. And he looked so sad, and I felt like terrible watching him. Like I wanted to just go up to him and give him a hug and tell him that he did everything he could, but obviously I think deep down that guilt is kind of overriding him a little bit. And he instantly turns away from the mirror, and he's like breathing really, really heavily. And Cersei tells him that his fatal flaw is very rare and very dangerous. And she tells him to save a friend, he might be forced to do great evil. He could sacrifice a quest, his soul, or even the world. And all of a sudden, the jug explodes on the desk. And Percy runs out of Cece's office, and Annabeth obviously chases after him. Annabeth obviously tries to stop him, but he carries on walking away from her, saying that Cersei is right and that they should all be afraid of him. And he said that he can see it now. And this iconic line, guys, this line is just perfect. It's all over TikTok, it's all over Instagram reels, and I love it. I even have this quote printed out in my room because I love it so much. And the quote is, so if I had to choose between saving you or saving Olympus, Annabeth, I'd burn it all down. Oh my God. So this is significant because he could have said, I'd let it burn. But the fact that he said he would burn it all down, I was screaming internally. Like, you don't understand. I was so, like, my shipping cart could not take it. I was pacing up and down in the room and I was thinking, oh my God, Percy Jackson, the man you are. Like, it's just, he doesn't realize the impact of his words. And you could see it on Annabeth's face. Like, she's like stunned almost. And she's trying to reassure him and remind him that, look, we need to go and save Grover. Like, we don't have time for this. And this is the first time where Percy is questioning himself. He's questioning his human side, and he's worried that he's more human than demigod. And it was breaking my heart to see him doubt himself. Like, he's looking like, yeah, a fatal flaw is their weakness, but it's also their greatest strength. And now he's thinking like he shouldn't be like this. Like, he needs to change who he is, and I don't like that. And that's what hurt me even more. And he says to Annabeth, like, I'm all human, like, that's all I am. Like, I haven't spent enough time in your world to change that. And you know what? As a fan, I've always thought that his humanity, his humility, is what makes him so special and so different from everyone else in this world. And he thinks that he's a danger to the quest. Like, he was like, this wasn't even my quest. Like, I wasn't even supposed to be here, and now I'm here and I'm making things worse instead of helping. And he just looks like broken, and I hated it. Like, just seeing him in that state hurt me, and I was like, no, like, my poor baby shouldn't feel like this. And he eventually like walks away from Annabeth, and she looks so shaken up, and you can see like her one word about human choices on the ironclad has affected him. And like, when he was doing the self-evaluation, like, this has made things worse, this has triggered him, and he's gone down into this spiral of self-doubt, which is like obviously the worst thing for anyone in a quest, because they're losing sight of not only who they are but their end goal as well. And that's where the scene comes to an end. So scene 6 is obviously in Polyphemus's cave, and Clarisse is climbing up the rope to try and escape and grab the fleece. Grover uses his panpipes to help the Clarisse hold the tree up so she doesn't fall. And he tells her that Yadira wants her to hurry up, and Clarisse has absolutely no idea, like, what he's talking about. Come on, guys, he's talking about the tree. Like, if you didn't get that by now, like, what world are you in? She keeps climbing, saying that he's weirder than she remembers. Like, come on, Clarisse, don't be mean. Like, he's trying to help you out. Like, you ain't got the options to sit there and be mean to everyone. And as she reaches the top of the rope, it snaps and she falls down, face planting the floor again. I swear to God, like, she hurt herself so badly. Like, she face planted herself so badly that she's managed to knock herself out. And Grover obviously rolls her under this cart to protect her from Polyphemus, who is approaching. Grover starts talking to Polyphemus, but the silly satyr forgot to cover his face. I was like, for goodness sake, you haven't covered your face and you're gonna put yourself in danger. And Polyphemus asks where obviously the demigod is, and Grover tells him that she escaped. And Polyphemus realizes that Grover isn't a lady Cyclops and that he's tricked him. Uh-oh. And he growls and eventually attacks Grover, and the screen goes black, and I was like, uh-oh, my poor boy, like, I hope he's still alive. Right, let's move on to the next scene. So the scene opens up with Percy admiring the statues of the six that have passed the Siren's test. And Zadie, who is the old woman who was helping him with his leaf crown earlier, offers him some pomegranate juice. And he says that he doesn't think that he should be around Liquid at the moment. Bless him, he's so adorable. Zadie tells him to not be discouraged and that he can't rush the process. It's so weird because everybody like on this resort seems like quite robotic. Like, they all sound like Cersei. They all say the same thing over and over again. And she goes to leave, but Percy stops her and asks, how did the six like make it through? Um, and he goes like, I'm not asking for myself. Like, I need to help Annabeth get through this, like, get past the sirens. And you know what? He's so noble, and he knows that just because he's been dragged down by his fatal flaw, like, he doesn't want to drag Annabeth down with him. He doesn't want her to feel held back. Like, he actually wants to be the reason, like, she gets past this, whether he's there or not. And Zadie tells him that she's on her own quest for a pill called the Tear of Aphrodite, which is hidden in the Sea of Monsters, apparently. And that actually sounds like a really exciting quest, but it means that Zadie must have been on this quest for so long that she's aged on the Sea of Monsters, but she still hasn't reached her goal, which is quite sad. And, Percy says, if you don't mind me asking, like, how long have you been here? And she's like, I don't like to dwell on that because it can make you lose hope. Which, again, really, really sad thing for her to feel like that. But also, I think it's kind of telling Percy, like, he shouldn't dwell or feel like he is on this quest because he can't help himself. Like, in time, like, he will learn to tackle his fatal flaw, and eventually that hope will be reignited and he'll be able to get out of there. She reveals that every time she has lost hope, a new hero had managed to make it past the sirens. Okay, I see what's going on here, and I think Percy got it too. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but just remember that point that every time she lost hope, there was a hero that made it past. Everybody that she met at least past the sirens, which is interesting. And she tells him that miracles happen, don't they? And he says, yeah, sure. And she walks off. And Percy has his like thinking face on. And I was like, yeah, that boy knows what's going on and he's going to go and do something about it. Percy knocks on Cersei's door and enters, closing the door behind him. And that's where the scene sort of cuts off. Again, very, very interesting. Let's see what happens inside her office. Okay, so inside Cersei's office now, and Percy obviously apologizes to her for running out earlier when she was doing the self-evaluation on him. He tells her that his mum has told him her story, and about how she gets so badly treated by the travelers that she meets, and uh, he says that he sympathizes with her because she always gets left behind, but despite that, she still tries to help everyone, obviously because the fatal flaw is of course loyalty. And she calls him like a very kind soul. And it's the kind of this reminder that this human side that he sees as such a weakness is the side that most people tend to fall in love with, and that's why he's so respectable to a lot of people. And you can see like a lot of the qualities of Sally's that's embedded in him as well, which is quite nice. And he says that he remembers what it's like to not have any friends, so he understands why she wants to keep people here. And she looks a little bit taken aback. She's like, whoa, like what's going on here? And Percy sort of calls her out for helping the six get past the sirens by cheating. Damn, I was not ready for him to say it like that. I was a bit like, oh, okay, I suppose that's how it is. um and he says that he can't prove it, but he thinks that she keeps some wax to help certain heroes pass the sirens, so people don't lose faith in her program. He's actually a lot more intelligent than people give him credit for, and I'm glad that he's managed to figure this out all on his own. And she tells Percy about the first time she ended up on this island and the people that took advantage of her. And I do feel sorry for her. Like, it's not nice being treated like an obstacle or like helping people so much and then they forget that and then they just leave you. And she says the quote, heroes only love you as long as they need you, which is such a powerful statement. And in her experience, it's always been true. But again, she is wrong for what she's doing as well. So I get it, and so does Percy, but at the same time, like it's not right. So she's kind of done what like Luke has done in the sense like she's been wronged in life, so she's trying to like kind of take it out on other people. And obviously we know that that's wrong. Like the same way like Luke feels like he was wronged by the gods, which is why he's trying to get back at them. And Cersei's doing the same. Like she feels like she's been wronged by all these heroes that she's helped, so she's trying to take it out on other heroes. Again, not a good way to live, but I see why she's doing it. Percy says that he offers to keep her secret if she helps Annabeth get past the sirens. You know what? He's probably one of the most selfless characters I've ever met. I swear, like, there is nothing that could make me love him more than I already do because he just does things like this, and I'm like, wow, like, you can tell how much Sally has had an influence on the way he's grown up, despite the fact like he's kind of been to different boarding schools and he spent a lot of time away from her. Her goodness has rubbed off on Percy, and I'm so happy with that. She accepts his offer and blows basically silver glitter into his face, transforming him into a guinea pig. So this was very different, obviously, from the book. Percy drinks a milkshake and he transforms into a guinea pig, and obviously this time she's just blown some glitter in his face and he's turned into a guinea pig. She places Riptide in her pen holder and puts Percy in the cage with some other guinea pigs. She says that she can't let Annabeth pass the sirens without even taking one class because and everyone will figure out that her program is fraudulent and take off, and she doesn't want that. A guinea pig welcomes Percy into the cage, saying his name is Eddie, and tells him to settle in for good. Um, the guinea pigs were so cute, and I love that they were all real, like guinea pigs, and I'm glad that that was all practical. Vanilla is the guinea pig that plays Percy, which is quite cool, and he's really, really cute. He's like this lovely, like ginger and white, which is like just so it's like adorable. It made me want a guinea pig basically. And my best friend loves guinea pigs and he used to have some. So it just made me think of that. Okay, let's move on to the next scene. So it opens up with Clarisse waking up and realizing that Grover is missing. She hears a wardrobe door rattling and realizes that Grover is obviously trapped inside. She asks Grover where the Cyclops is, and he tells her that Polyphemus is out looking for her on the island, and she has to find the key to free him out of the wardrobe. Clarisse says that there's no point in the quest anymore because it's all over, and Grover thinks that Annabeth said that, but Clarisse tells him that it's the Oracle. Like the Oracle is the person that's got in her head. Grover asks her about what the Oracle said to her as it might help them escape, and she remembers what the Oracle said about a tomb of stone being her final resting place. And Clarisse knows that, like, she thinks that this is the end that she deserves. And I was not ready. Like, when I heard her say that, I was like, oh my god. Like, I know Clarisse is a piece of hard work. Like, please don't get me wrong. I know Clarisse is a pain in the ass. But she doesn't deserve this. Like, I know there's good in her. I know there's some positive sides to her. Like, why she feels like she deserves this punishment, I'll never understand. And, she stood there like getting really emotional. And I was just like, Jesus, like I wasn't ready. I think that's what the problem was. Like I wasn't ready when I was watching the scene. She remembers the promise that she made to her soldiers that obviously she couldn't keep. And she says, Father, forgive me. I have failed. Bless her. Like, honestly, you could see it in her eyes. Like, she's become hopeless. Like, that is it. Like, she has no faith in her ability to complete this quest anymore. And I think this is the first time we ever get to see her in such a vulnerable light. And it's such a huge moment of self realization for her. She's failed because she had no one to help her. Like, she failed because of her own choices. And like Dior's acting in this scene was incredible. She brings so much depth to Clarisse, and I couldn't have imagined anyone better to play this role. And I love that we got to see this side of Clarisse. Like yes, she's a brave warrior, but because she didn't have a supportive network, she's ended up in the position that she is in today. And I think she's convinced that she's going to die here now. Like no one's going to remember her, and I think she feels a little bit like no one's going to care because she never showed that level of botheredness to anyone else. So why should anyone be bothered by her? Do you know what I mean? And obviously Grover tries to step in and tell her that her father is merciful and that he cares about her. Now, this is where I got a little bit suspicious because I'm not joking, but last season when we met Ares, we know that he literally doesn't give a damn about anyone. And we know that he would never forgive her for failing the quest. Like he warned her in I think it was episode 3. He said to her, like, you know what's gonna happen if you fail. And I think Clarisse realizes in this moment that that's a load of BS and that's not Grover that's talking. She opens the door and sees Grover tied up with a gag in his mouth. So obviously the voice couldn't have been his. So it had to be Polyphemus. He puts Clarisse in a bag and knocks her out. Bless her. She's constantly getting like knocked to the head in this like episode. I do genuinely feel bad for her. I'm surprised that she doesn't have some sort of brain damage after all of this. Polyphemus says that Grover and Clarisse will make fine bait. You know what? He's a very, very cunning Cyclops. He's very, very clever. And I like that because it makes him a much more interesting villain. Polyphemus reveals that he has known all along about Grover's deception and that he knew that he was contacting Percy. And I wasn't really expecting that. Like that's very, very different from the books. But I like it. I like that change. It's very interesting. Grover realizes that he's put Percy in danger by contacting him through the empathy link, and he looks absolutely mortified. Right. Again, we are back in Cersei's office, and Annabeth comes into the office, obviously looking for Percy. Percy is trying to get her attention from the cage, and you know what? He makes such an adorable guinea pig. I was just like, oh, it's so cute and fluffy, like he just needs a cuddle. Cersei starts talking about fatal flaws again, and Annabeth reveals that hers is pride. Like she's known all along what her fatal flaw was, and Cersei calls out Annabeth for vying for her mother's attention while pretending she isn't. Ooh, that was a low blow. Like I felt that. Like that felt like a personal attack. And I was just like, okay, well, again, she is human at the end of the day. Like she's gonna it's a natural instinct for every child to want their parents' attention. So it's not really like a thing specific to Annabeth, but you could tell like she was hurt by Cersei saying that. She asks Annabeth if she thinks Athena will be more disappointed if she fails or if she dies, and Annabeth tells her that she isn't going to do either of those things because she has a plan to get past the sirens. Of course she does. She's not the wise girl for no reason. Annabeth shows her the rope and pulley system that she has designed to help her get past the sirens, which is an incredibly clever idea. But I'm also thinking internally, like, Annabeth, don't tell Cersei that. Like, she doesn't want you to leave and she's going to do whatever she can to stop you. Cersei says that she hopes Annabeth's plan is clever enough to get past. Yeah, I don't think I believe her for an absolute second. And Annabeth notices the guinea pig cage and she sees Percy the guinea pig making the same whirlpool in the water tank as and Riptide in Cersei's pen holder. Annabeth reveals that she is more afraid of her mother than dying. Yeah, I've always known that, I think, but that doesn't stop me from feeling absolutely terrible. I get why she feels like that. Like, she can't live with the thought of disappointing Athena, but she's more than happy to die trying. And isn't that like the craziest thing? Like, you would have thought, like, for a demigod, like, their worst fear is to die a horrible death, but for Annabeth, it's like to fail her mother and know that her mother is disappointed in her because her mother's approval means so much to her. Annabeth reveals that she was okay with only seeing her mom a few times in her life until she met Sally and Percy. And she starts walking towards the cage and she's telling Cersei about the times that she's met Athena. And she takes out Hermes' multivitamins from his what's it called, his satchel, and she tells Cersei that nothing makes her more angrier than the thought of someone trying to take Percy away from Sally. Oh my god, my heart exploded. I was like, yes, girl. I was like, I love it. They are so cute. She throws the multivitamins into the cage, and the cage explodes, and Percy and some other pirates come back to their human form. Cersei runs out of the office as the pirates chase her, and Percy helps Annabeth back to her feet and asks her if she's okay. I love that he cares more about her more than he cares about himself. Never mind the fact that he just went through the most painful transition of turning into a guinea pig. He cares more about her. Guys, this selflessness is like constantly present. Percy grabs the wax from Cersei's straw and says that they can use this to get past the siren. So he was right all along to have that suspicion about her keeping wax to help certain heroes. One of the pirates, who was Eddie, who we met in an earlier scene, offers Percy some celery and tells Percy to call him Blackbeard, which is so cool. Again, that's from the books, which I love, and that's where that scene comes to an end. Okay, we're almost there, guys. We are probably getting closer towards my favorite scene in the whole show, and I'm so excited about this. Let's do it. So the scene opens up with Percy and Annabeth sailing towards the sirens on a boat that they borrowed from Zadie. Cersei is watching them through the glass windows, and she does not look happy, guys. She knows that they've wronged her, basically. Percy realizes that there's not enough wax for both of them, and he offers it to Annabeth. Obviously, again, another selfless act. Like, he'd rather her be safe than him, which is crazy. And I don't think anybody else in this world apart from him would ever do something like that. He tells Annabeth that she can use the wax, so he is more than willing to be tied to the mats. The siren sounds are really, really creepy, guys. Like, just hearing them in the background as the boat was approaching the island was just like absolutely terrifying. Like, it actually made my skin crawl. Annabeth ties Percy to the mats. Bless. Obviously, last time it was Percy tying Annabeth down in the book, but this time Annabeth gets to tie Percy, which is interesting. Which is probably really sad for Walker when he read that, because I know how excited he was to tie Leah to the boat, and unfortunately that didn't happen in the scene. Just as Annabeth is about to put the wax in her ears, Cersei uses magic to take it from them, and you see her in the office holding the wax, now wondering how they're going to get past the sirens. Percy tells Annabeth to cut him loose, but she's way too busy staring at the sirens. You could tell she's already going into the trance. And the siren song, oh my god, it literally gave me goosebumps. I felt like they were summoning me. And that comes back to the lovely Bear McCree, who has designed the entire score for Percy. He's absolutely fantastic. And the siren scene is probably some of his best work in this series. Percy realizes what she's about to do and basically begs her to cut him loose so that he can help her. But she says that she can do it. Oh god. I was like, I already knew that her pride was getting in the way a little bit. I was like, this girl thinks that she can do it, but she actually can't. Percy is basically still begging Annabeth to untie him, but she's already in the trance, like she's already locked in. And it shows us what she can see in the trance. And she's walking through this sewer in the hideout that we saw in episode 4, I believe. And we can hear Grover here singing the consensus song to kind of mediate an argument between Percy and Luke. Again, this is very different from the books. In the book, she sees her mum, her dad, and Luke having a picnic and basically being the family that she's always wanted. But I'm glad that now the show has changed it so it's showing her difficulty choosing between Percy and Luke and how torn she is about her feelings about the both of them. Um, and Percy sees Annabeth walking straight towards the sirens and he's trying to figure out a way to stop her. Sorry, minor interruption there. What was I saying? Yes, we were talking about the siren scene. So Percy obviously sees Annabeth walking straight towards the sirens and he's trying to figure out a way to stop her. Like he's desperately trying to figure out a way to stop her. And it flashes back to obviously Annabeth in the trance, and Grover, Percy, and Luke are all there. So this is basically the show's way of symbolizing her difficulty about choosing between Percy and Luke. Like on the one hand, she loves Luke as a brother, and he's everything, and he's always defended, like he's always looked after her and all of that. And now all of a sudden he's turned bad, and she's struggling to see him for who he is now. And obviously, she's tied down because of her feelings for Percy as well. Like, she doesn't understand what she's feeling for him just yet. And she just knows that she's causing a lot of problems between Percy and Luke, which is probably why she can see them when she's in this trance, which I think was probably a better idea than showing her with her mom, her dad, and Luke. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a more accurate version of this type of Annabeth and what this type of Annabeth wants. Percy eventually manages to get a hold of Riptide, and you can hear him like cut himself loose. Annabeth is literally stood right in front of the sirens, and it flashes to her in her trance again. And Grover asks Annabeth for a little wisdom. She stabs Siren Percy and Percy and siren Luke. Bloody hell, like that girl did not even hesitate. But one of the sirens, who was obviously taking the form of Grover, manages to scare her and she falls onto the floor, which was not funny but also like incredibly scary because she actually looked terrified. I think she thought she was gonna die, which is obviously like not a nice feeling, but also I get it. The siren then gets impaled with a spear, and Annabeth realizes that it's Athena. Andra Day, look, so cool in this scene. Like her aura is insane. Like she literally is Athena. Like she's got this kind of like stoicness, but also like what's the word I'm looking for here? Like this I wouldn't call it like regalness, but she's got like this boss lady vibe. And Athena praises Annabeth for trapping the sirens, and not falling for their trap, basically. And she looks kind of so happy and surprised. And this is like a big moment for her. Like, this is what she's always wanted. She's always wanted her mum to recognize her for who she was and how special she is. And now that she's finally getting that validation, she feels happy like anybody else would. And that's obviously like her human side kicking in again. And her mom tells her that she's always been watching her, and that's what Annabeth always wanted. She's always wanted someone who would always look over her and take care of her, and she thinks that that's what Athena is. Athena eventually extends her hand out for Annabeth to take, and she does, and it turns out it was another siren trick, and literally everybody who watched this part of the show and the reels and the TikToks around the time this episode first was released, everyone's saying that they fell for it as well, and so did I. Percy, of course, grabs onto her waist and pulls her into the ocean and back onto the boat. Right, I've got to talk about something here which I touched on maybe a little bit like in the last episode. I think I sort of mentioned it. Was I'm really sad that we didn't get to see like the underwater bubble sequence, because obviously that was my favorite part of the Siren Bay sequence. I hope that maybe we do get to see it like as a deleted scene or whatever. And I understand why the show took it out is because they didn't want people to complain that Percabeth was being rushed, and I understand that. But it was a little bit disappointing as a Percabeth fan. But we did get like the really beautiful quote about him like burning Olympus down. So I suppose that kind of makes up for it. And also what, like I said before, like Annabeth sees this time around is like completely different. and her priorities are different in the show. Like the family that she has in the show is Luke and Thalia, and obviously Percy and Grover, and like Thalia not being there, it was like a big thing as well. But the fact that she's still torn between Percy and Luke, I think makes a really great foreshadowing for season three, because obviously she spends a lot of season three with Luke, so it'll be interested to see how their dynamic kind of changes over the season. Anyway, the last and final scene that we're kind of going to talk about is Annabeth and Percy sat on the boat. Percy has changed out of his toga and his hair has completely gone back to normal, which I thought was nice. It's nice to see him back as his true self. And Annabeth tells him that she thought her mum would actually show up and, be proud of her because they passed like so many impossible trials, that she thought that this time her mum would see her for who she is. And she realizes that that's pride, and Percy is like sitting there shaking his head, and he's like, that's human, like you want your mom to notice you. And he says that she should, and I thought it was really sweet. Like, I feel like he always knows how to say the right thing, and it just makes me swoon every single time, because it's just like he knows how to lift her spirits, I think. And it's so interesting because she sees like this human side of her as such a weakness, which is sad. Like, she never acknowledges like being human as like a positive thing. Um, and it shows like more in the show that because she's never allowed herself to feel these emotions, she's never learned how to navigate or deal with these complex emotions. And Leah as Annabeth, like she conveys so many different emotions through her eyes, and she performed so well, particularly in the Siren Bay scene and this scene. And Annabeth asks him like, "What did you see like when you heard their song?" And he says the only thing that he saw was her. And you know, I think this kind of shows that she is his weakness. Like, if something happens to her, like it brings out the worst in him. But also, like, she shielded him at that moment in time because his concentration was purely on saving her, and literally nothing could stand in his way. Like, he just knew he could save her. He didn't know how or why he was doing it. Like, he just knew that he could do it, which was amazing. And he says to her, like, "I think you saved me." Um, he's really he's really modest, and I love that he never takes credit for anything that he does. And you know he tell like she tells him that, "No, you definitely saved me." And she says that, "If you'd stayed at camp, I would have been Siren Chow, so thank you." And yeah, it was just a really nice, like, sweet and simple moment. Like, there was nothing like too romantic about it. It was just two people who would do anything to save each other, which I love. And Percy tells her that maybe they both had to be here to get past the sirens. Like, they needed each other to be able to survive. And I love that their fatal flaws as well as their strengths kind of complement each other really, really nicely. And I think the show is just continuing to cement this idea that they are the perfect people for each other. And then obviously at one point Percy's face goes a bit dark, and he realizes where they are: 30, 31, 75, 12. They had arrived at Polyphemus's island, and that's where the episode cuts off. Oh my gosh. Okay, I feel like I've been talking for a long period of time, so I'm going to try and wrap this up a little bit with my final thoughts and feelings. So, definitely my favorite episode so far this season. It's also the longest episode in the show as well, which was very interesting, and it took me ages to break this down and review it. Um, like I said before, the entire set of CC Spa was absolutely amazing, and it was somehow like even better than what I imagined in the books. The costumes, the hair, the makeup, this episode in particular was amazing, and it was very ancient Greek, and it had like a regal quality to it, which is what I liked. Hilla, Cersei, and Zadie were great additions to this episode. The performances individually were amazing, and I'm glad that we got to learn a little bit more about Cersei's story as well, so that we can try to empathize with her and maybe understand that she's maybe not as evil as we think she is, even though she makes the wrong choices, which is quite interesting. It was really nice to see more of like Grover and Clarisse this episode. It's a very new dynamic. Like, they don't really interact as much in the books, so it's nice to see them interact in the show. Obviously, the speech that Clarisse gave was probably one of the standout moments of the episode. it made me emotional, and it's really hard seeing someone who is so like externally tough break down and feel like absolutely hopeless and feeling like they deserve whatever they get. And I'm glad that the show was able to portray her in such a vulnerable light and give her so much depth so that we as an audience can kind of like connect to her. Polyphemus was absolutely terrifying. I'm really excited to see more of him in the next episode. He has such a like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like a dominating presence when he is in scenes. So it will be nice to see more of him in the next episode, and obviously to see him interact with Percy and Annabeth as well. Walker and Leah obviously did amazing in the siren scene. Obviously, I was a little bit upset about the underwater bubble sequence, but it was still a really good scene, and I like the way that they sort of changed the trance that Annabeth was in, like to see something different as opposed to just her parents and Luke, and she got to see like two men in her life who she loved fighting, and obviously Grover being like the mediating person in it, I thought was quite interesting. And finally, obviously, the entire score for the Siren season scene was absolutely perfect, and it was terrifying. It kept me on the edge of my seat, and I loved every second of it. So yeah, overall a really really great explosive episode. I mean, there's not much I would change about it. I thought it was a great ride, and I'm really excited to talk about the next episode. We only have two more episodes left. No, sorry, three more episodes left to review together, which will be exciting. So thank you guys so much for listening in. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. um, Let me know in the comments what part of this episode was your favorite. All episodes of my podcast are available to stream on Spotify and on my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Threads to be the first to know when a new episode goes live. And I will be speaking to you guys very soon. Bye.